Welcome back, everyone, to the All You Can Board podcast. This is episode 8. My name is Dylan.
And I'm Carlo.
And today our main course is going to be called The Spirit of the Game. So what does the spirit of the game mean to each of us? Is this something dictated by the designer in question or by the people at the table that are playing it? Where do you draw the line? All of this and more will be on today's episode. Quick little note, there are some people killing trees outside my building, trimming trees actually. So there might be some construction noises. I'm hoping I've got like a blanket up here, sound dampening, and I'll be doing some post-processing to hopefully eliminate anything. But in case you hear anything, that's the reason, but hopefully it doesn't come up.
I like that you referred to your house as your building. Do you normally call it your building?
I do. Yeah. This is the building that I live in. It's a way for me to connect with humans better, I find, in calling it just my home.
Right.
But I'm going to, as always, we're going to start with our appetizers. We have a couple short ones today because I think our topic's going to be pretty meaty. Or veggie. Again, we don't want to discriminate here. But I'm going to throw it to Carlo first for the appetizer.
All right, so before I get into my actual appetizer, I just want to follow up on the Golden Geek Best Podcast nomination thing that we sort of shouted out last week. So we did not make the cut for the 10 podcasts to be nominated, which we're not surprised. You know, we're very new to this, and it was also brought to my attention that these were specifically the 2025 Golden Geek Awards, and that our first episode actually only launched in 2026. So I don't know why it took 2 weeks or so for anyone to inform me of that before I went and announced this on here, and we made a post in our Discord and all that. So yeah, I don't think we would have had a shot anyways or even been eligible, but for anyone who did take the time to nominate us, thank you. And I just wanted to mention, so the nominees are up now. Go check them out on boardgamegeek.com. I'm just going to give a quick shout out in the podcast category, the 10 podcasts that were nominated. I haven't listened to 6 of them before, but I did want to mention the 4 that I have heard because they're all excellent. So I can highly recommend for anyone who's looking for a new board game podcast to check out either Decision Space, Game Brain, Space Biff Spacecast, or Sporadically Bored. They're all very good and they're all very different from each other. My vote will probably be going to Decision Space. I have to say they're one of the best, if not the best podcast around these days. I think they've been doing it for a really long time. And if I had to really, really highlight one, I'd recommend you go check that one out, but I can definitely vouch for all 4 of those. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about today for my appetizer actually goes hand in hand with the Golden Geeks. And I've noticed for years now that the Golden Geek Awards, it's mostly about the board games themselves, right? They have all kinds of different categories for the games, but then they have that one best podcast where it's like they don't have a best written reviewer. There's no best YouTube channel or any other type of board game media or any type of involvement as far as that goes. There's no best designer as far as I can remember. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to give a shout out to 3 really underrated, underappreciated YouTube channels. And part of the reason is not only that, the YouTube channels tend to get overlooked when it comes to the Golden Geek Awards, but also, we know just from how long we've been doing this and how YouTube has changed over the years with, I don't even get into YouTube algorithm and how things do and don't get recommended and all that kind of stuff. But even just the fact that doing it solo, and you've had long stretches, Dylan, where you're either running the channel solo or doing the bulk of the content like you are right now. And so each of these 3 channels that I'm going to give a shout out to is 3 people who are each doing this solo and who have very small channels that I think deserve a lot more attention. And the main theme that you're going to notice here is that they're all covering very sort of hidden gem, under the radar games. And it's something we've really taken a more of an approach to since we've come back in a big way in recent months, as we're trying. We've always tried to cover games that are a little bit lesser known as well and stay away from what, pardon me, is necessarily in the hotness and everyone's talking about. But so yeah, I'm going to start with first off, the first channel is Undiscovered Games. So I don't know the name of the guy who runs it, but it currently has 3.3K subscribers, just over 3,000. The channel's been around for about 3 years. And I would describe his channel as, I think I saw it in a comment somewhere, so I'm stealing someone else's words here, but someone referred to it as an archival project. And I think it's super cool to see a channel that's doing things in this way, where he is often seeking out games that have 0 videos on Board Game Geek. You look it up and you're like, this game has very few ratings. There's no copies available anywhere in the world right now. There's no videos. How do I learn about this game? And in some cases, it has taken him 2-3 years to track down a copy of a game, then get it, play it a bunch, and then make a video for it. And it's he's preserving history in a way, right? Before these games can be forgotten, he's kind of like doing his part to help bring these games to light and kind of like, yeah, preserve them and that sort of thing. And I'm just going to give an example. There's one game he covered called Genesis, which is actually a Reiner Knizia game that I had never heard of before. And there's actually a publisher that saw his video and like contacted Knizia and is now going to reprint this game and publish it now specifically based on his video. So now he's doing this with other games, and I've seen in other comments him saying like, let's hope that so and so, publisher picks this up based on this video. So the best term I can come up with here is like I'm not a religious person, but like this guy's doing the Lord's work. Like, this is something that not a lot of people would do. It's very thankless. Putting videos out for games, people are going to be like, I've never heard of this game. Why am I clicking on this video? So anyways, lots of game footage on there. He's a big Stefan Dora fan, and if I'll recommend it, one particular video called 50 Favorite Full-Length Board Games. I know you've watched this one as well, Dylan. It's like an hour and 43 minutes, and it's one of the best board game videos you'll ever see. Just the amount of like footage and the amount of like kind of unique games that he covers and the amount of insights you get. Go check that out if you're looking for one specific video. So again, that's Undiscovered Games. The second one is Board Gems. This is run by a guy named Daryl, who actually owns, I think he owns, maybe he's not the owner, maybe he just runs one of the locations, Pizzeria Ludica and Game Room. So they have one location in Vancouver and another in New Westminster, BC. And if you look at their website, they have like a massive games library there. So if we ever make it that way, we definitely got to check this out. But his channel has 4.4 thousand subs. Has been running his channel for about 6 years. So he doesn't have as much, I would say, in-game footage as Undiscovered Games or the next channel I'm going to talk about. But he is extremely insightful. He is one of my favorite people to listen to talk about games because he's clearly super knowledgeable. Like, he's like a board game encyclopedia from a different era where he talks about games in a way that, like, you hear people talk about games like this with newer stuff sometimes, but it's rare to hear someone who knows this much about games, even just like comparing different editions and like publishers that are no longer, making games and all kinds of stuff. He really, really knows his stuff, but he also just, the way he speaks, he's very well spoken. It's a very like inviting channel. He has a really great sense of humor, often very self-deprecating. And he just has really good in-depth breakdowns of games. And man, I'm jealous of his game collection that you can see behind him. There's so many like out-of-print games there that I'd love to play. I don't have a specific video recommendation for him. I think all of his videos are great. He doesn't have like one specific standout video to me, but just pick a game that you're either interested in or whatever that you recognize. I can recommend like the ones for Samurai or Fresh Fish or Creta, which is now Sardinia. So yeah, that's Board Gems. And the last one, which is the smallest and newest one by far, is Good Luck Board Games. So both of those are all one. So Good Luck, all one word, and then Board Games, all one word. And this is run by a guy named Ethan, who actually joined our Discord a few months back. And I just want to make a quick caveat right now that I didn't even know he had a YouTube channel until he had been there for a while. He didn't join our Discord to promote his channel. He was just being a contributing member. He's very active in there. And kind of as a result, I eventually found out that he had a YouTube channel. But his channel, it's criminal. He only has 71 subscribers. To be fair, the channel is only 6 months old, and he only has 10 videos. But they're excellent. He's covered games such as Clans, Konik, Der Isis, Erland, Terra Nova, Link, Scharfschotten. These are games that most people probably haven't heard of. He has covered Duel for Cardia, which is the newest game on there. But he has really, really nice B-roll, like lots of nice panning shots, great music, like music choices. And they're very, like, these videos are a little bit more, I would say, edited than the first two channels I mentioned. They're scripted videos. As a result, they're much shorter, on average probably about 10 to 15 minutes. But of any channel that is in its earliest days, like, this is one of the most impressive starts I've seen to a YouTube channel, just looking at like first videos. So yeah, he's doing an awesome job. He's also in BC, actually. I wonder if he's been to Daryl's Pizzeria Ludica. And you actually see the guy from Undiscovered Games commenting on a lot of his videos and back and forth. So you can see that these people all kind of like appreciate what they're doing and are all kind of like encouraging each other in that. So for a video recommendation, I would definitely recommend his Erland review. But only watch it if you have 17 minutes to watch the full thing, because there's something at the end that kind of really brings it all together that's just really, really well done, I think. But if you're looking for a shorter one, you either check out Der Isis or Scharfschotten. So yeah, again, that's Good Luck as one word, and then Board Games, all one word. I say it like that because it's sometimes when you search it, it doesn't come up, but you can just type like Erland review and you'll find his channel there. So yeah, check out those three channels: Undiscovered Games, Board Gems, and Good Luck Board Games.
Nice. Yeah, I don't consume a lot of. It's funny, I don't consume a lot of board game podcasts or board game YouTube these days. Mostly, that's just a me thing. Like I find that as someone who's a creator in the space, it influences me too much. Not influences me like I'm like, oh, if I see this, I'm gonna do that as well. It's more just that like I start to doubt things I'm doing, or I start to be like, oh, should I do this? Like I get too far down the YouTube algorithm rabbit hole, what's working, what's not for other people, and I let it influence me, or I can tend to let it influence me. And so by necessity these days, I just don't really consume a lot outside of like specific videos that pop up or that you guys share or whatever. So it's great that you're doing, as you said, or not you're well now. Yeah, you're doing the Lord's work. Now you're sharing other undiscovered channels. And as we know, the Lord is also a board game player. Favorite game is Ark Nova, and it's very, very sad. But just kidding.
Yeah, no,
okay,
and honestly, I don't consume a ton of it either these days. But like these are the ones I actually find myself legitimately sitting down to watch by choice more often than most other channels. So
nice. Okay, so for my appetizer, this is going to be a short one, but it's mostly just going to be a question I'm going to pose to you, Carlo. And I know like this is going to be based off the solo plays that you have done, but also just like how you view things when you approach a solo game. So I've been playing a game recently that I've talked about a lot on the channel before, which is Fjords, but I've been playing Small Fjords, which is the compact version of that is essentially replicating the original Fjords experience in a really small box. But this one uniquely comes with a solo mode. And so that's the other thing that made me buy it. And the solo mode plays very quick. It's like 10 to 20 minutes. But it's kind of like not a puzzle, but it is this type of solo mode where it has this goal of like the perfect score. Like there is a perfect score you can get, and it's listed in the rule book what it is. If you achieve that, my impression from having played this about 5 times now is that when I get that score, I'm going to have very little, if any, incentive to go back and play this again, because it's probably going to take me a long time. It's very hard to get this perfect score from what I've even got close to it. And so I think what's going to happen is when I get that, I'm not going to be playing Fjords anymore. This has like a shelf life for solo play, which is very different from like, let's look at a game like That's Pretty Clever, where the master score or whatever is whatever your current high score is, your group's high score is. And so yes, you might feel like eventually I can't beat this score, but there's nothing telling you that you've mastered this score. And so my appetizer is just asking you the question, which of those two type of solo experiences is more interesting to you? Would you like, let's take cost of the game out of it, let's take like that aspect of like what you've invested in versus what you're getting back. Do you find it more interesting to say, I'm playing this solo game, and at some point, I'm not going to play this anymore if I achieve this? Like, I'm basically trying my best to get this score. And when I do, it will be an accomplishment, and I won't play this game solo anymore. Or do you prefer something that's more open-ended, and you choosing not to come back to it is just you tiring of it, or personally thinking, I don't know if I'm going to get a better score, but you could go back to it in theory? Like, which one is more attractive to you is my question.
it's a very good question, but I almost feel this is a better question for you to ask yourself. I'm not going to dodge answering it. I will answer the question, but I bring this up because we've almost gone in opposite directions. Like I tried to start getting into solo gaming a few years ago when I became a parent and during COVID and all that, and I've played progressively fewer and fewer solo games over the past couple of years, whereas like that has almost coincided with like you have gotten really into solo gaming over the past few months. So I think in general, it's nice to have a target to aim for, but I will say that so I'll give a game like Hallertau by Uwe Rosenberg as an example. So we played it a couple times, 2 players, however many years ago, and then I ended up buying my own copy. I really enjoyed it. And then I played the solo mode, and I played it twice, and both plays I got above the what is considered like the great score kind of target. And then I felt like, why would I go back and play it again? Like I haven't gone back and played it solo since then. A game like Friday has like different benchmarks of like, well, this score is a good score, this is a great score, whatever. I like having multiple of those instead of just having one target. Like I think to have no target score at all and just see like how well can you do, it's nice, but then you're kind of, I think it leaves it a bit more up to the enjoyment of the game that way. So I like having a target score, but I like having a scale more than just like beat this score, and as long as you do, you kind of win. Because then it starts to feel like a cooperative game where like, well, we won. To play it again is just kind of getting some variety, I guess, variability. But yeah, what about you?
Well, so like, and I should clarify, like there is like a scale in the fjords, but it just it clarifies that the top score isn't just like it is the highest score you can get based on the game that they've made. So like it is like a physical, like if you hit this score, like there's no score above it. This is the best score you can get essentially, which I haven't seen as much in solo games, so that's why I thought it was kind of unique. Yeah, so for me, the reason I asked this is like I played The Hobbit recently, and in The Hobbit, I felt like solo. I should clarify, I felt like that one was almost too open-ended, where unless I was willing to play each of those chapters like 10 to 20 times, it would take a while to really like craft like, okay, what's a really good score? What's a bad score? What am I competing with? What's a score I want to compete with? What's one where I just had a bad game? So I felt that was too open-ended. Whereas Fjords, as cool as it is to try to like, I'm going to keep coming back to see if I can get close to the score. But there is something that, and I deal with this in like all mediums, like video games, books, even. I like to go into something knowing that if it's something I'm really excited about, that I have a lot of time I get to spend with it. Like if I go into a video game and I know that, okay, this is gonna be a really good video game, but it's only 2 hours long. As a person, I'm actually like less incentivized to go play that because I have not finished so many video games because I just don't want them to end, I think is what is going on in the core of me. And that's why I love long JRPGs and RPGs in general, ones with lots of side quests where it kind of feels like they don't end or you play for hundreds of hours. Like I like that open-endedness of like I dictate when I'm done with it. And so I've been struggling because I feel like it's somewhere in between what Fjords is doing and what The Hobbit is doing. But ultimately what the answer is for me is like I'll always prefer an Automa that is challenging but varied. You don't know how challenging it's going to be in that session, so it mimics what you're getting out of like a human challenger, where you're not trying to beat a score or anything. You're just trying to like match this person's skill and beat them, overcome what they're doing on the board. And so the better an Automa is, the more I'm impressed with the solo experience. And this is kind of just reminding me of that. But it's also just wanting to call it the fact that I personally haven't played many solo games yet where it's like, this is the best score you can get. How long will it take you to get there? And when you do, you're going to feel like you beat it. So I just thought it was interesting. And I'm also just calling this out because I think it's interesting that Fjords has a solo mode now. I thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, I had no idea there was a solo mode in that, but I'm going to ask you one quick follow-up about the Automa. Do you find that playing against an Automa in a game, or Automa, or however you say it, whether it's well done or not, or how like intricate it is, does that color the way that you're then going to approach it with an opponent later? Like, let's say you play a game 10 times solo against an Automa, and you start picking up on tendencies, and you're like, okay, in order to beat this Automa, I have to play this way. But if that Automa is kind of following like a script, do you think that now when you go play against an actual human player, that's going to affect how you play, because you're kind of, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, your mind has been trained to play a certain way to win?
So no, but it's a slightly different. The thing it does impact is if a game has a really well-designed AI system or whatever, whether that's in an Automa or Toma or whatever, or it's like something else that like replicates like spaces being covered for you or whatever, I will sometimes look to that as a bit of a tell for what is good on a board, what is bad on a board, what are the things I should be focusing on. That kind of gives me a bit of an indication without having to go look up a strategy guide or something like that on like, okay, I guess this must be a good space because the game has the space being blocked first every single time or something. So sometimes that'll color when I go to play a multiplayer. I'll know, okay, this is probably a strong space. I should either keep my eye on that or I should try to grab that and stuff like that. Like sometimes that'll inform me of those things. But outside of that, not really. Like I don't find that I take much from the solo experience and have it color how I play multiplayer, aside from what I'm learning and getting more adept at the game systems. Like that aside, not really. And maybe that's just like speaking again to the competitiveness, the lack of competitiveness, and sometimes in me where I'm not like looking for like an edge to take away from it. And I also feel like compelled that if I know that about like a space where it's like, okay, every time I played this solo, this space is blocked or I'm competing for this space, that's something I'll almost communicate at the start of the game with other people, being like, by the way, like I don't know if this is just my solo plays, but like this space seems good. But like I also don't want to color their strategy. So it's an interesting question.
I was gonna say, is that in the spirit of the game, Dylan?
Yeah.
To be entering a multiplayer game with knowledge from your solo plays of what is or isn't good.
That's such a great segue.
You see that segue? Yeah.
It's such a great segue, and we're going to have to segue. We're going to take a little break from this segue because even though I'd love to just jump right in, we do have a quick little sponsor, but then your appetite's now wet, and we're going to come back and talk about the spirit of the game. So we'll see you shortly.
All You Can Board is proudly sponsored by Victory Pints. our local game store of choice here in Winnipeg, Canada. We strongly believe that Victory Pints is the gold standard of board game stores, not just here in Winnipeg. Their main priority is having a wide selection of games, many of which you won't find elsewhere. They ship Canada-wide, $15 flat rate, or free shipping for orders over $200, and even take requests to try and order in specific games. They also have a used game section where you can trade in games for store credit, and maybe even find some hidden gems that others have traded in. Note that the used game section is only available for in-person purchases and trades. Again, located in Winnipeg at the corner of Henderson and Hespeler, check them out at victorypints.ca. A massive thank you to Victory Pints for all their support over the years.
Okay, welcome back, and we are jumping into our main course, which is the spirit of the game. So rather than me explain what we mean by this topic and everything, I'll give my thoughts on what I think when I hear spirit of the game, what it means to me, and then I'll throw it to Carlo, and you can give your thoughts as well, and we can kind of see how aligned we are, or how different we approach this. So this came out of we've had discussions, multiple discussions, where this kind of thing came out of it, and we only really put this to words in our expansion episode, which again, we expand and do bonus Patreon podcast episodes on our Patreon channel. And so this kind of came out of that, and then I just decided to spin this into a topic that I would host because I thought it was interesting. So for me, spirit of the game, I think there's two things at play. One is the spirit of the game that was intended by the designer, the person who designed the game and said, this is how I am designing the game to be. This is how I'm imagining it to be. I'm designing this to be a competitive game, or I'm designing this to be a very carefree game, or that you play this game while not doing this, or while I expect my players to do this. That's one aspect of the spirit of the game, and I do like to factor that in sometimes because, the designer is an artist. They've created something, and if there's an intent that they think this is how you will experience the game best, whether I agree with that or not, whether I ultimately house rule something, whatever, it's nice to at least give them the chance to experience their art in the way that they intended it to be, and then I can decide for myself whether I agree with that or not. But I think that there's also the secondary aspect, which is the spirit of the game at the table, which is our group can play the same game as another group, but we can both have our own way of approaching it and our own way of looking at that's the spirit of that game in particular. I won't use examples yet because we'll get into that, but pick any game, like Brass Birmingham or something is the first one that came to my head. How we play that game and how competitive we are might be different than another table, and they might have their own spirit based on the fact that they have host ruled something, or they are very, very competitive, and so they'll capitalize on certain things that maybe another group is less incentivized or feels less compelled to capitalize on different moments because they're trying to have more fun or try different strategies and stuff. And neither one of those is wrong. I just think that there's a spirit of the game that's locked in by a designer and what they intended. But then, like any art form, when you put it out into the world, there's also this new sort of spirit that it now exists by how people consume that media. And so it's almost like I've separated into two different forms, neither one wrong, but that's kind of how I look at it in my head.
Yeah, that's a good point. And even when you just to quickly touch on this, the spirit that is intended by the designer, we just covered fromage on our YouTube channel recently, and we were talking about the aspect of the simultaneous play and how technically if you really want, you could say I don't want to take my turn until I see what the person next to me does, so we're going to do this in turn order. And I think you said that the designers have mentioned that over hundreds of playtests, they've never seen anyone actually ask to do that. So technically you can, but is that in the spirit of the game? So I think it's interesting the designer point of view, and you rarely see that listed in the rules, right? If they're not going to say you can do this, but we don't think you should because that's not in the spirit. Is that the designer's responsibility? I don't think so. They put the rules in, people can I've even seen differences of opinion on house rules. Some designers online will say I designed it this way, we did playtesting, don't house rule my games. And other people are you bought it, I want you to enjoy it, do whatever you want with it, change the rules entirely, make a house rule, that's fine. So I like that there is some gray area there for sure. I think what is or isn't in the spirit of the game is, like you said, going to vary from person to person, from group to group, whether it's expectations that people have set going in, or it's past gaming experiences. And I'm going to come back to the concept in a moment of implicit versus explicit. But I'm going to it's probably going to be a running theme throughout here. just in terms of like, yeah, is this something that we have to explicitly lay out as a group in advance? Like, hey guys, we're going to play this game, but let's keep in mind that we should do this and that because this is whatever. Like that never comes into play. That I don't think we've ever had that discussion before playing a game with anyone. So for us, like our group, it ends up being more implicit, but that's partly because we know each other well and we've been gaming together for a long time. Whereas like, we don't play a lot of games with, like I would say, strangers. Like we don't show up at random game nights where we don't know like we don't like go play games at our local game store game nights and that kind of thing. And we haven't been to a lot of conventions where we're playing games with people we've met for the first time. But even then, it's never been something where we feel like we have to lay out like we're all playing to have fun here, guys. Like we're all meeting each other for the first time. Like that conversation has never come up. I think it's also interesting that there's a difference between like the spirit of a specific game or the spirit of gaming in general, like the act of playing games. And that's something I think we're probably going to come back to. I think in general, yeah, I'll leave it there for now. What else you got?
Okay. So the follow-up I just want to ask us both is like, what does it mean to each of us to have the spirit of the game compromised? And because that's going to come up a lot when it's like, this would compromise the spirit of this particular game. So I can kick this off too. So when I'm saying that, what I mean is that whether it's something the group has established, whether it's something the designer in the game has established, it's doing something in service usually of winning. And it's not always the case, but it could just be putting yourself ahead, whatever, but doing something that sort of either breaks immersion or either like goes outside the game in a way that feels like, okay, but that's not really what we're doing at the table, or it's just something that kind of is against the spirit, the nature of what the group has decided on, or like an unspoken thing that has been decided that is in some way. I don't like to use the word selfish because I don't mean it in like a really harsh way. I just don't have another like synonym to use, but essentially in service of yourself. It's like, it would be like, well, I'll come back to this example. I'm not going to elaborate on it here, but it would be like in a no communication game, having a moment of like communication because you'd rather sort of get the result you want than deal with the difficulty of not being able to communicate in that moment. Like a game that says you guys can't communicate, but you have a way around it or whatever. In many ways, that's what I mean when I say like compromising the spirit of the game. It's not intended, but you're doing it to further yourself or your group if you're playing co-op, whatever the case may be. What about you?
Yeah, just before we go on from that, I just want to touch on the possibility of someone who's like, it's not always in order to win. I think sometimes people will do it to spite someone else, like to attack another player. And that's something we'll circle back to later on in the episode, I think. But I guess in a way that is in service of themselves, their own goals. If their goal is like, I don't really like that person at the table, or they beat me last time, so I'm going to make sure they lose, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I think... I agree. It's like we kind of all have at the table this kind of like social contract. There's this concept of the magic circle, which you can read about online. I'm not going to get into it now. And I think we all kind of like are in agreement that we're all at the table for the same reason. And whether that's, depending on how implicit or explicit that is, how clear it is to everyone at the table, as soon as you go outside of that, like I think for the spirit of the game to be compromised for me is like to have someone do something that goes outside of the scope of what makes gaming or playing that specific game enjoyable.
Yeah, well, very well said. And so not even before we get into something, the first thing I wanted to focus on, because I think it's not one of the most interesting, well, yeah, maybe one of the most interesting, but also the one that might be most divisive, or people have different thoughts on, is the idea of things like table talk, metagaming, mind games in the game that you're playing. And so what I mean by this is we're not talking about a game that like has negotiation or mind games as part of it, right? That is a whole different thing, where that would be different talking about like a game like Zuvadis compared to talking about a game that doesn't have negotiation in its rules, right? And if you were trying to negotiate. So if you're playing a game and you, for instance, have a really poor hand, right? Or even if you look at something like poker. Poker is an example where it's in the spirit of poker to lie and to deceive and stuff. But if you're playing a board game like Arc Nova, again, like I brought up earlier, or any of the like any board game you want to think of, and you start saying things where you're in a poor position, but you're actually in a good position, or you start trash talking at someone at the table to like speed up their turn or to whatever. And I don't mean it in a mean way. It could be in a joking way, being like, oh, you're going to take forever on your turn again. Like that might incentivize that player to be like, oh, am I taking too long? And start to like make more rash decisions that cause them to make mistakes. do you think that those type of things are in the spirit of a board game in general? Like, again, not one that has negotiation, those type of things in it, but just like we're just playing Castles of Burgundy, and I'm ragging on you for taking too long, so you start speeding up your turns. Is that in the spirit of Castles of Burgundy in that session, or is that me trying to get an edge in something that is not part of the spirit of the game? What do you think, Carlo?
Like, I think it's going to depend from one group to the next. Like, I hate to go to the it depends thing, but really, like, again, a lot of this is going to be group dependent, because I've seen, like, or I've even heard other people talk on, like, whether listening to another podcast or you see on forums, and like, for some people, that is the spirit of their gaming group. It is, we are all here in this cutthroat battle to see who can win, and regardless of what you have to do, like, whoever wins is going to feel the best at the end of the game night and whatever, and that's okay. There's no right or wrong way inherently to do that. When we play games, it tends to be a little looser than that, and we're not trying to like find every possible edge that we can while playing. I think if it's done respectfully and like jokingly, and I think this comes down to too, like how well you know people and how close you are as friends. So like in our gaming group, when someone points out like, oh, like you gotta keep an eye on so and so, they're in the lead and whatever, when we know they're not, and they're trying to deflect, the social engineering we've talked about, that kind of stuff, like that doesn't bother me, and I don't think that's against the spirit of the game with the people I've played with. I've never felt that way. But I think, yeah, if I were to show up again, like a convention, and I'm playing with strangers and I'm like rushing people or trying to point out bad moves that someone made, or be like, you should be attacking this person, what are you doing? Like, then I think that's kind of against the spirit of what we're all here for.
Yeah. And that's and it's, I don't think I think it's saying it depends is a good answer, because I think it really does. And I think that's also part of what I want to get at, is that like, there is no real, like, this is right, this is wrong. It is going to be group dependent, but like for context, like for me, the thing I always wrestle with is I am someone who feels like when I'm going to use hockey, I'm going to use sports as an example here. Like, even though there's nothing, this doesn't make me mad, and there's nothing that's going to change about the game. But like, for instance, like, let's say you have a goalie who's doing really, really well, and then he lets in a really bad goal, and the crowd starts really, really ragging on him, and that gets in his head, and it causes him to do worse. To me, like I wouldn't say it bothers me, but I think that it dilutes the idea of like, we are watching these, athletes who are the best at what they do on the ice, on the court, whatever, challenge each other to see who's better, because now we're getting people who are not really involved, they're there to spectate, getting involved, and now we don't have this even playing field of like, okay, but was that goalie actually beat, or did he get psyched out by this other aspect that wasn't even taking place on the ice? It's like, another comparison for Super Smash Brothers players is like playing Super Smash Brothers on like Final Destination, no items, or playing Super Smash Brothers with specific items, or playing Super Smash Brothers on any course with all items unlocked, right? Like, there's different levels of like when skill is like on display versus when, okay, you got lucky because you got the hammer and nothing can beat the hammer or whatever, right? And so I wrestle with that, because in some ways I like and especially in board games, like some of my favorite board games, I like the idea of you can't just fully predict based on like, okay, this person's better at the game. Every time we sit down, they're going to play unless you get better than them. But if they've mathed it out, if they're the best at it, it's going to be a little predictable. So I like that, but I like it when it's in the game itself, when it's in the context of it. And so what I wrestle with is like when that starts to be outside the game, when it's someone trash talking, when it's a crowd reacting to a player and stuff like that. There's this thing happening outside the game that is impacting the results in the game. And if you're someone who's really invested in the results of that game, watching it, or like what's going to happen, suddenly you have to factor in like, okay, but that one session, yeah, that person won, but like, was it that they let this person get inside their head? Is that part of like, well, they're not as skilled at tuning that stuff out, but is that a skill you expect of someone playing a board game? Like, this is something that I think about a lot, and it's not that I like have one way that I necessarily really strongly sway, or that this is something I think about and like it weighs on me. It's more just, I think it's interesting that there's so much nuance even to just like, if you were going to get competitive, like, in Magic the Gathering or in Agricola or whatever, that suddenly it's like, okay, but is that person the best Agricola player, or are they just the best at tuning out this metagame tactic that this other great Agricola player constantly uses, and he found his match because this person doesn't affect them? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like this thing that's outside the rule book of the game that affects the rules and the outcome of the game. And because that's not in the rule book, book, is it really in the spirit of the game? Was that what Uwe Rosenberg thought or intended, or does he enjoy it? Does it bother him when he finds out that like someone's using a tactic that is outside the mechanics of the game he designed, right?
Well, and that's tough because then, like, yeah, I'm sure you'd agree that we don't expect every single rule book to have a section that is like the spirit of this game, like based on what this designer intended, this is okay and this is not okay. Like, so it is, again, it's always going to come up. And okay, I'm going to go back to the implicit versus explicit thing really quickly. And then I want to touch on the hockey and sports example you gave. But because I think a lot of this, with a lot of things in life too, comes down to a scale of, so I'm going to give some extreme examples here. Okay. But let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, of like how, like what is in the spirit of the game, how seriously are we taking the activity kind of thing, or the game. So let's say a 1 on the scale is like the equivalent of like, who cares, we're all just here to have fun, don't take it too seriously at all, it doesn't really matter who wins kind of thing. And if a 10 on the opposite end of the scale is, and again, I'm going with a very extreme example here, but it's like, if you win, you live, and if you lose, you die. Okay, it's a matter of life or death. Like, so like, obviously those are very extremes, but where, like, is it on the players or the designer or whatever to establish in advance, like, okay, well, we should probably be at like a 6 out of 10 level where like, yeah, we're all playing to win, but like, guys, let's not cross any lines, like no personal insults, or like, you know, if it was a matter of life or death, then like, yeah, it's probably acceptable to take shots at the other people around you if like, again, that's never going to happen. You're never going to be playing a game in that situation. But I'm saying, where on the scale does it suddenly become acceptable to do something that if you were playing on lower stakes would be considered crossing the line, right? Like I have a whole thing here about like the stakes and how high the stakes are coming up as well a little bit later in the episode. But like, is it fair to assume that everyone's going to implicitly like land on that same point of the scale? Like if I asked before the beginning of the game, let's all think of a number from 1 to 10 of how seriously you want to take this. And then at the end of the game, we're all going to reveal what we picked. Like, are we all landing on the same number?
Well, no, definitely not, I think. And what's interesting too is like, it also, how do I word this? It's almost like if someone uses like something that's like trash talk. Let's just throw that out. Let's say it's trash talk. Like they start like insulting someone at the table. This is obviously another extreme, and it wouldn't happen in like our gaming group. But like, let's say that someone has this thing in their back pocket, but they don't do it every time. They only do it when they're really behind or when they're really losing, right? And to try to like get an advantage. To me, what this starts to feel like is it's almost like this cheat code that the person enters at a time when they're not able to win within the rules of the game. So it's like, we're playing this game, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm really behind, I can't figure this out. Well, I'm gonna use my fail safe thing that usually 6 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10 it gives me an edge, and I'm gonna start trash talking people at the table to get into their head. It's like, if that group is used to that, and if this person does that, it's like in some ways this is the spirit of the game, this group and this person that you play with. But if it's only ever brought out and only ever used as a way to get that edge when you're behind, if it does feel like this person, it's almost like a sore loser mentality. It's like I can't win within the rules, so I'm going to resort to this thing again, right? Versus if it's something where it's like every time this person plays, this is this person's style. At least at that point, you know what you're getting into with this person, and you know they're not just resorting to this as a way to be like, I don't want to lose this game, so I'm going to do this thing to try to get an edge. And this is also coming from me, I'm someone who I just don't. When I trash talk, it's never as like I'm trying to be like, I'm going to do something to see if this person has a worse turn. It's really just to either get laughs around the table or to just like the enjoyment of the session, to like poke fun at each other back and forth. And it's usually never serious. It's like trash talking about something ridiculous, or like me calling you out in quotes to be like, oh, going into islands again in Feast for Odin. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm doing that because I'm hoping, okay, if he doesn't go into islands, then I'll go into islands and I'll get a higher score this game. But if I was, to me, that would be outside the spirit of the game, because I'm trying to like socially manufacture your strategy to give me an edge. And that's just something I don't personally approach games, sports, competition that way, but it's very present in a lot of competitions, a lot of sports, things like that. And it always just kind of seems like a bit of an, like, not underhanded, but just like that's like a less interesting way to win or come out on top, because it feels like you're having to do that because you're not as good at the actual thing you're doing, if that makes sense.
For sure. And I also want to make the distinction between, like, if your like level of whatever social engineering, trash talking, like, gets into the point where you're I don't want like, even if it's not quite the level of personal attack, but if what you're doing is like saying something that you know is going to like strike
Agitate
a chord
them.
with agitate in some way, I think that's where it's a problem. Like, even if
Sure.
it's something as simple as like, like, oh, like Bob, you still have never won one of these. Like, you're not good at these games, but like you might be like, I don't know, maybe it's a bad example. I'm trying to think of something that's like, you're commenting on someone being bad at something that is maybe like a reflection of their personality, even outside of gaming. Like, oh, so like you never see things through to the end in real life. So like, let's see if that strategy is really going to work out for you. Like that time you like went for that job offer or something. It's like, okay, that's completely uncalled for. Whereas if I'm like, oh, Dylan, you're going for the old whatever strategy again, like a bold move there, like kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then I think that's like, hey, I'm commenting maybe on like a strategy you've taken before that maybe didn't work out, or that like, I think that's a little more within what I would consider acceptable. But I want to just quickly go back to the hockey thing for two things. One is like when you talk about like when you're getting desperate and you do something to get that upper hand, and you're talking about like being a sore loser. So like, let's say in a hockey game, a team's losing and they send out their like fourth line grinder or their big guy or whatever to like start a fight with someone to get the crowd involved, or like try to make their worst player in the team get into a fight with the other team's best player so that they're both in the penalty box, something like that, to try and get an edge or to like spark your team. Again, like there's 15,000 or whatever fans like who've paid to watch, and there's all this money involved, and like like people have paid to come watch this game, and also like there's athletes getting paid a lot of money. Like the stakes are high and it's a big thing. So like in that case, is that like, do you find that does that also bother you, like in a sport like that with like millionaires playing?
And I'm not saying I'm in the right there either. It's just, and so when I say bother, it's not like this is a super strong opinion, but it to me, it's like, this is the most egregious example of it. So I'm not comparing these two 1-to-1, but it would be like if a team was playing a team that was much better than them, and so one of their players goes out there and purposely injures their quarterback, and now their quarterback's knocked out, their star quarterback's gone, and so now the team's not as good and they have a better edge to win. It's like, that's the extreme of that, where it's like, we can't beat this person, and so let's injure him. That's very different than let's go out there and like antagonize or start a fight or whatever. But it's like, but it is finding a way to be like, I don't think we're behind and we need to get this edge, and it's like, let's it's like throwing dirt in someone's eye. It's not the best, or like, it's not the most respectful thing, but it's like, do you do it to get the win? And some people will be like, you do whatever you need to do if the stakes are high. And it's like, life or death, sure. But if the stakes are just winning the Super Bowl, winning the Stanley Cup and stuff, it's like, is that how you want to win it? Do you want that asterisk next to your thing being like, yeah, you won, but the star quarterback didn't play in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we'll never really know then.
Well, for sure, yeah. And when it's like a physical injury or something long term, I 100% agree. But I'm saying, like, again, if it's someone goes out there, you start a fight with someone on the other team, and you see in hockey, like, even when someone goes up to someone and drops the gloves and is like, do you want to go? Usually after the fight, they like pat each other on the back and often say like, oh, good job, or like, thanks for like stepping up, kind of thing. Like, they know their roles on the team. And so that's something where like 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, everyone has forgotten about it. There's no longer implications. So do you still think that's outside of the spirit? If both people involved or both teams involved are like, hey, I would have done the same in your position. It's part of like, whether we like it or not, it's part of like hockey culture. It's built into the sport. Does it still bother you there?
So it's in the spirit of like in this case, it's in the spirit of hockey. Like, hockey has the fighting and everything ingrained into it. Like, that is in the quote unquote rule book. Like, that to me would be in the spirit of hockey. It would be if I was playing hockey. To me, that would be outside the spirit of how I want to play it. Like, it would be like my gaming group, my hockey group. That's not how I'd want to settle who's the best at something. And it still bothers me if I'm watching a game and then all of a sudden the game swings because of a fight or something. It's like, to be honest, like, and this is coming from someone I don't really care about the fighting in hockey. I'd be glad if they eliminated it. I care more about like the play and the skill that's actually happening to score goals and to save and everything like that. And I don't want something else tarnishing that result. If I'm really interested in which team's better, I don't want to have to think about, okay, but was it, or did the fight just amp them up and this team got in their heads? Like, to me, that's just a level of thinking about it I don't enjoy as much. But I agree. I will concede, obviously that's in the spirit of hockey because it's in their culture, it's in their nature, because they present that in the rules. And so I'm gonna go take us to a couple of points ahead here because we've kind of already talked about it. But like, is it possible for the spirit of the game to be compromised by being too competitive? And we talked about this a little already, so we don't have to get fully back into it. But like, it doesn't really, like we talked about it coming down to the group. Is this something that like if you don't say ahead of time, you're sitting down to play Through the Desert, and if you don't decide or like talk about ahead of time how competitive you want to get in, and one person at the table starts playing uber competitively, using every metagaming tactic, every table talk tactic, you playing like taking 5 minutes on their turn because they want to really see, okay, are these two moves, if I really math this out the next 5 turns, which one is the most points? Like at that point, is it outside the spirit of the game for this person to take it upon themselves to do that? Or is it on the rest of the group for not having communicated that, properly ahead of time, because this is just how that person plays board games and enjoys them?
It's a bit of, I don't want to say a loaded question, but like I think there's, again, maybe like, I don't want to accuse you of conflating competitiveness with like behaving rudely kind of thing, but like in a way, I think like, yeah, like being, how would I phrase this? We going back to our like what was a Sweet Defeat and Bitter Victory episode, we talked about being like overly competitive, and I think again if you get to a point where you are like, yeah, again, doing stuff outside the game, like insulting people, doing stuff that is clearly just like, you're being an unpleasant person to be around, like is that they're too competitive, or are they just like rude or an unpleasant person to be like, totally. I know it can be as a result of them wanting to win so badly, but it can also just be like they're not good at managing their own emotions, or they're the type of person who gets like, worked up in the moment, and maybe they like step away from the game and can realize later that in the moment they kind of cross the line. I don't know if it's always coming down to the specific wording of like they were being too competitive.
Yeah, totally.
It might be.
I think it's 100%. I would think like, well, a lot, and I should clarify too. Like a lot of these questions I'm like asking to like start a conversation. I'm not necessarily giving away where I stand on them, but like I think that it absolutely comes down to the person. Like if someone, like I said, is resorting to using some of these tactics only in situations where they're behind, and you don't see that it's not their character, it's not who they are. They only bring it out as a way to win. In many ways, I think that could be outside the spirit of the game if you're the only one in the group doing that, and it's the thing that no one is willing to meet you there. You're the only one who's going to do it, and so every single time this is going to give me an edge. I'm going to win. It's like it feels more like entering in a cheat code versus like if your gaming group establishes that you already do this, and you as a person, it's established already does this, and the group's aware of that. To me, it doesn't bother me really, because there's this understanding of like, okay, this person has a tendency to like, we know they're in a jam when they start doing this, and it's more like tongue in cheek and it's more fun or whatever. That changes it too. So it's very dependent, but I think it is interesting to talk about in the sense that like, yes, it's group dependent, but also if a group if we establish as a group that we don't really like if we just said we don't like table talk, metagame, all that kind of stuff, does that all of a sudden make it harder for us to like find people to come play with us or add more people to our group if they are someone who engages in that? Do they feel like they have to like change their own behavior to be able to be a part of that group? Do they have to then find a group that matches their like tactics more or whatever? It's just like an interesting thing to consider.
For sure. And like the example you gave about Through the Desert, like let's say we had the same group of 3 of us playing Through the Desert. On the first play, we're like kind of learning the game together. By the second, third, fourth play, whatever, we're starting to get a little better. We start getting gradually more competitive, and we start getting in each other's way a little bit more. Then let's say after we've all played it 50 times and we're just naturally becoming more competitive as a trio playing this game. Let's say we now introduce a new person and we invite a 4th player over who has never played Through the Desert. Is it on, like, now are we, again, whether it's implicit or explicit, are we saying, guys, let's maybe not play quite as intensely because of so-and-so being new at the table? Or is that something that you think we should each be internally kind of just reflecting on it and taking the initiative in advance to be like, okay, yeah, I'll still get in Dylan's way and so-and-so's way, but like this new player, maybe I'll take it a little easier on them just because they haven't played it 50 times like us.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at. I like that too, because like, is it in many, like it's a kind thing to do to like if someone's new to the game and you have an option, say like to target 2 players, to be like, I'm not going to just consistently target this person. I'm going to try to target one of the people who's more experienced because they might have a better way of knowing how to come back from it and everything. But is that beneficial to that person? Is that in the spirit of the game? Is that gonna? Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting and tough one. Like I would almost every time I would like choose to not target that player, or I'd go easier on them. I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't say I'm going easy on you or anything like that, but I want them to have a good first experience so that they want to play that game more. And I know that if they do, they'll get to the point where they're competitive and that they're, engaging in it at a level that is competitive for both of us to play. But if you and me play Agricola and say, like, it was my first time playing Agricola, like way back, and you've already played 200 times, and you destroy me like 80 to 13 or something like that, and then I'm like, oof, I don't know if I want to come back to Agricola, is that also like, it's in the spirit of the game for you to do every strategy available to you to win? But and sorry, you haven't done this to me, I'm just clarifying. But
yeah,
like,
no, but it's
it's
very valid, especially because, like, well, so as you know, like, for listeners might not know this, but obviously, like, I have two kids, one is 4 and one is 2. So playing games with my son Rio, who is 4.5 now, I've started to get into that area where I'm trying to figure out, like, I struggle with when I was a kid playing games, like when my brother taught me chess, like, I didn't want him to take it easy on me. Like, I wanted to lose however many, like 50 times in a row, so that when I finally beat him, it felt amazing. But, like, not everyone is in the same boat. Like, there's all kinds of things at play here, and I don't say that as like a bragging thing, but even just playing, like, there's this game called Me Want Cookies that I've been playing a bit with Rio over the past, like, however many months. And it's basically this kind of like thing, you look at these paths on this card and you're trying to be the first one. It's like, who can react quicker and grab the object that matches what you've spotted. And so, like, that's just something that, like, someone who's 38 is going to be better than a 4-year-old at. And so he does, like, and it's like first to a certain number of points. So some turns I'll do well and I'll specifically grab it first. But if I do too well, I can see that he's kind of like not enjoying the game as much. But also I've tried the other, like, I'm still learning about this, like how to play games with my kids in a way that, like, everyone is going to have fun. If I take it too easy on him, he knows and he picks up on it. Like, if I'm like, okay, well, I got the first 2 points and I'm going to, like, let him get 1 or 2 now. If I don't even make, like, reach for the piece, he's like, but Dada, you didn't try, like, you have to try to grab it. But if I try to grab it, like, in slow motion, it feels really, like, awkward and unnatural. It feels like I'm extending my arms super slowly so that he feels like I'm going for it. But if I do it too quickly, then he's gonna be like, no, but you have to let me get one, kind of thing. And it's like, okay, I don't know. It's a hard thing to navigate. Like, what is acceptable? And again, it's all about the disparity between people's expectations, I think. And it's like, I kind of want to say, like, read the room, but at the same time, like, not everyone has the same, like, first off, again, if you're playing with a kid, like, you can't expect them to read the room in the same way as you. But even when we talk about things like levels of social intelligence, emotional intelligence, like social awareness, that people have different levels of, like, strengths or weaknesses in those categories. And even when we talk about, like, people who are neurodivergent, really rely heavily on, like, clear rules. Like, people who are neurodivergent tend to struggle a lot with ambiguity. So knowing what is or is not acceptable within the confines of, like, this group or the spirit of this specific game isn't always easy. And that might make people sometimes shy away from from the more confrontational competitive games. And that's one of the main reasons why I think that when people make those declarative statements about, like, oh, low interaction games are garbage or whatever, that it's just like, it shows a lack of consideration or a lack of empathy for being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, because it might be that I would like to play this game, but if I don't know what is or isn't going to piss someone off at the table or what's going to hurt someone's feelings, I might shy away from that game and instead play something that's low interaction, because it might make me feel less anxious or worry about how other people are feeling at the table.
Yeah, it's the ever-present, like, struggle, I think, with speaking as someone, like, who's in the content creator space for board games and stuff, is when people are, giving opinions outside of just, like, talking with their friends or whatever. Like, it's like when I did that video on why I don't like Tainted Grail, right? If I had done that video from the perspective of Tainted Grail is an awful game and I don't know how anyone likes it, right? Like, if that's the stance I took, right? That's different than me saying, I'm confused by why people like it so much, and here's the reasons why. It's like, I'm giving my perspective in one case, and I'm starting and giving an opportunity for discussion. And it's not that the other way isn't starting an opportunity for discussions. It's going to trigger someone when they really loves Tainted Grail, and they're going to be like, well, I have something to say about this. So it's triggering discussion, but it's triggering it from a place of much more hostility. We're starting from a much more hostile place, and it's it's on the blame would be on me. Like the blame would be on me for starting the conversation that way. And then the question would become, why do you want to start the conversation from that place? Like, why not start the conversation from a place of being like, I'm really curious, like basically curiosity. Why not start from a place of curiosity? Is it because I get more views? Is it because I anger more people and it gets more comments in my YouTube videos? Like there's all different reasons and things you can get into there. But I think that, like, in my opinion, one is a more human and better way to approach it, and it fosters more connection and more interesting discussion where we can find places to meet, even when we disagree. Whereas the other one starts as in a place where it's much harder to get to that unified place, and even if we get there, there's more toil involved, if that makes sense, and it's just not something I'm usually interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can sum up what you said just with an excellent quote from Ted Lasso that comes to mind from this, which is, be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah, 100%. And so getting into some game examples, because we're talking about the competitiveness, we'll start there and then we'll get into like the more unique types of spirits and stuff. Oh, go ahead.
Can I just touch on one more thing? Because I think this is a really interesting. So just because I don't want to keep coming back to competitiveness, we touched on it in past episodes, but before you like fully move on from that, I think there can also be an issue where people are like not being competitive enough or not taking the game seriously enough. So like, you can even give an example of a sport. Like if someone on the field is like doing weird stuff, like the ball comes to them and they just boot it out of bounds and start laughing, or they're like running around the field yelling at people, or like the goalie runs out of the net to try and be an extra player because they find that more fun. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that can kind of like ruin the spirit of the game. Or like you even seen it in hockey, like a team is in the lead by 1, they're holding the lead, the other team pulls their goalie to try to score with the extra attacker, and then the goalie of the team that's in the lead is trying to score because like it's like super prestigious, I guess, to score as a goalie. And it's like, come on, man, what are you doing? That's gonna end. If you miss, it's gonna be icing. Then they have another offensive zone face off. Your team is more likely to blow the lead. Like, I think when you're pursuing like a personal goal, when it's like a team sport or a team game, is something like that. And also, again, if you're just trying to like, I'm entering this game with the goal of like just making chaos happen rather than actually trying to win, like that's you're not being competitive enough when everyone else is. I think that can also be against the spirit of the game.
Yeah, and this is actually great because the first examples for games I was going to focus on was going to be about what are some examples of games where the spirit of the game is compromised by imbalance in approach to specifically competition. So before we leave competition, like this is not my example, but this is like an extreme. It would be like if we played, I'm going to use Castles of Burgundy again. You and I sit down to play Castles of Burgundy, and just because I'm really interested in it and I want chaos, I'm like, all I'm going to do this game is I'm only going to get buildings because I know I can only hit a certain number of maximum buildings on my board, but then I'm also blocking you from getting buildings, so now you can't get any buildings this game, and you're going to have to do other stuff. I'm going to lose, and you're going to have and maybe I have a good time because this is something that is fun to me, but you're going to have a bad time because you're not really competing against me anymore, and you're having to ignore an entire aspect of the game because I'm taking it away from you, right? Like that's an extreme. That's not the type of examples we're going to use, but that would be like one type of way that would ruin the spirit of the game. So the example I'm going to use here is a Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. That to me is a game where you can try to every single time cards are played, whether it be actually writing it down on a piece of paper or really, really trying to make mental notes. You can try to track which cards remain in people's hands. Because for people who don't know, everyone starts with the same characters in all their hands. It's established. It's random, but everyone has the same characters. And so I can track, like Carlos played the 4, Carlos played the 15, Carlos played this, and that'll give me an edge because then in decisions much later in the game, I'll go, I don't think Carlos played this card yet. To me saying I don't think, but I can't remember is a more interesting and fun way to play Libertalia because everyone's trying to be like, oh my God, have we seen him play that card? Versus if I said, oh no, here, no, Carlo didn't play it yet. Carlo hasn't played the card. He has the Brood in his hand, 100%. Like to me, that's just like, that's not how I think Libertalia was meant to be played, Winds of Galecrest. And I could be wrong. Some people might be like, we play and we 100% are trying to keep track and writing this stuff down. And that'll give you a more competitive feel of Libertalia. But that is a game that every time I've played doesn't feel to me like a game that was meant to be played that way. And I'm 100% basing this off of the newest version of Libertalia. I didn't play the original, just to be clear. But like that's one where I'm like, I'm not as interested to play Libertalia if I'm like if I have the answers to those questions. It's always more fun and has more people laughing when we're like, oh my God, did Jake play the Brute? Like, is he gonna Brute this round? And then we flip over the card and there's a Brute and everyone's like, oh my God, and they freak out. versus like if we just knew the answer to that. So that's an example I can come up with where it's like how you approach competitiveness in that game really impacts it, and there is, I think, a spirit that gets compromised if you go too competitive.
For sure. And I think I mean, maybe I won't put words in your mouth, but tell me if you agree or disagree with this. I always prefer a decision in a game where I have to go off a bit of a hunch. Like I have some information, but I have to sort of take a risk or just like make a decision rather than something that is, I can calculate and find what is the automatically clear best move. And that's why I think what you're saying about that kind of like aspect of hidden trackable information, I'll just rattle, like I think I gave 2 or 3 of these examples on our expansion episode, which is like, keeping track of people's money behind their screens in modern art, keeping track of people's...
I was gonna say not to put an example in your mouth, but I was hoping for the example you talked about here is given the example of like modern art, because I know we have talked about that before, but just like that's a game where it is competitive, but there is this aspect that almost like ruins the competitiveness, at least in our mind. So can you like elaborate for if people didn't listen to the expansion on what you mean by like the modern art money?
Yeah. So just like everyone starts with $100, and throughout the game you're like auctioning off paintings, so people can be buying and selling paintings. At the end of every round, you're going to be, the paintings that you've bought can be sold for a profit and kind of thing. So, and at the end of the game, it's just whoever has the most money wins, but everyone's money stays behind their screen. But anytime you buy or sell a painting, you really kind of announce like, how much did you, okay, I get 60, whatever. So you could theoretically be there with pen and paper tracking everything, but then like, and it would give you a huge advantage, absolutely. But then when future auctions, like those last few auctions of the game, are you going to be sitting there being like, okay, well, if I pay them this much and I do this, then they would end up 2 points ahead of me, so I'll make a slightly lower bid. Like, I don't see how that's fun for anyone. Like, to me, that just ruins it. And the other one, like Tigris and Euphrates has the points behind the screen as well. El Grande has like the Caballeros going into the Castillo. These are all things that you can track in varying ways. But like, yeah, I don't personally think that like that to me feels against the spirit of the game, even though the designers of these games are so experienced and so good at what they do that they know that they were putting something in the game that could be tracked. So it's not like it's a design flaw. Like they knew what they were doing, and I think they kind of just left it up to the players to determine what they find to be acceptable.
And I think in some ways it's almost against the thematics of the game too, because in what world in a game, if we take anything in life or whatever, and you're like how much do you know about what someone has in their pockets and their wallets, and like when they're betting, when they're auctioning and stuff, like yes, if you see like Jeffrey Bezos bidding against you, you're going to be like, well, he's got deeper pockets than me. But like in most situations,
Jeffrey Bezos, is that what it is? I don't know.
Is that not his name?
I've just only ever heard people say Jeff Bezos.
Oh, I don't know.
This is the first time I've ever heard someone call him Jeffrey.
You're right. That's too much respect I'm showing him too. I'm just going to call him JB.
Yeah,
back to when JB at the table. No. But like I just feel like you don't have that information, actually. Like if you're going to thematics of modern art, I wouldn't know how much money you have to spend, or if you have currently more money than me. And if that's something where is a metric we're competing with, it's true to the theme of the game for us not to be tracking that as well. So it's not only outside the spirit, it's almost outside the theme too.
I've never actually thought of that aspect. That's an excellent point. Like, yeah, modern art, we're each representing an art house. And it's like, yeah, why would I have access to your financial records? Like,
exactly.
do we have the same, or do we have the same corrupt accountant who is just like sharing our finances with the other rival art houses? Like, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So let me ask you on the topic quickly, hidden trackable information, because of the Board Game Arena logs. So when you play on Board Game Arena, you have the log of all the actions. And when you're playing asynchronously, this helps you, when you get back to your turn, be able to see what people did. But as a result, something like Tigris and Euphrates that's actually on Board Game Arena, you can look back and see which point tokens of which colors people have taken. So like, I almost have a question for you of like, why does Board Game Arena then allow you to view the log if that's something that maybe is against the spirit? But my follow-up would almost to that be like, if they didn't have a log, then would people then be like taking screenshots of the game or screen capture, like recording the game and taking that next step to be able to track it anyways? Because it's like, if the game's not going to do it for me, I'll do it myself. And then that creates a bigger disparity between them and the people who aren't doing it.
So yeah, this is super interesting. So I'm going to separate this. Like for async, I think the log is 100% necessary. And that's a separate thing. I think when you're playing async, to be able to log on and say, okay, what exactly did my opponent do if it's not clear from the board state, or it's like, what just happened? How did this all change? That's great. But like, yes, if we're just playing a game on Board Game Arena Live, I don't think there should be a log. And it's because I think that like if someone is going to choose to take screenshots, is going to choose to keep a log themselves, it's like in some ways I want them to feel like they're cheating because it is outside the spirit of the game. If the game isn't providing you with a natural way to do that and you're having to do that yourself to get that edge, it's like I just want you to know this isn't intended and you are trying to get an edge over me by doing this additional thing. And maybe that just makes me feel good because it's like the way you think you need to beat me is by getting this edge. And if that's what makes you feel good, that's fine. I'm not going to go that route. That's a little like selfish way to approach it, but I'm going to take this even a step further to BGA. It bothers me, and I think it's outside the spirit of the game when they give you the option for live scoring in games that don't have live scoring for the physical version. Because if a game, when you're playing, that's why there's some games that are better to play physical because there's no way in Forest Shuffle I'm going to be keeping track of what my partner currently has their score at. We always end a game and we think, okay, I think I had a good game. I think I'm better. And we don't really know. You can play on BGA with live scoring and it changes the game completely. You and I have played with live scoring where I was constantly looking at that score and being like, okay, I really have to catch up with Carl. I got to make bigger, riskier plays. And it's a very different game and it doesn't feel at all like what it was intended to be. So that's one of those things where like, regardless of what, like I know some people probably like the live scoring. I just really don't think it should exist on BGA unless it exists in the physical game. I think we should be trying to replicate the physical games as much as possible. And that one has been one that always bothers me is like live scoring.
I agree 100% with that. I always prefer hidden scoring. And it's not just about having people feel like everyone is still like has a chance to win, but I think it's about ensuring that your decisions still feel meaningful right to the last move of the game. Because if there's 5 turns left each and I have like 100 points and the other players have 30, or like vice versa, it doesn't have to be me winning, but like I don't want to feel like, well, what are we even doing here? I'm not going to be able to catch up to the leader, so it doesn't really matter what I do on my turn. I'll just do this. Let's get to the end of the game. Whereas if it's hidden and there's the illusion of me having a chance or of it being closer, then it still feels like the decisions are interesting. And ultimately, you want to be invested in the game for as much of the game as possible, right?
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so spinning this off of competitiveness for a bit, I want to talk about some examples of games that get impacted a lot outside of competitiveness, even as far as becoming bad games when the spirit of their game is compromised. And I'll kick this off so I can give this a bit of direction here. So I'm going to give 2 examples. One is So Clover and one is Hanabi. Okay, so these are 2 games that I think, and both of them are like limited communication type things I'm going to talk about, but this is, I think, one of the most obvious examples or genre examples to give, is when a game says that players aren't supposed to be able to communicate with like words, with their expressions or anything like that. They have to use the confines of the game to do it. And so like for So Clover, for instance, if I'm the person that everyone's guessing how I've orchestrated my board, and every time that they go to put a tile down to say, I think this one goes here, I go, oh, no, don't do that, right? Like, to me, it's like, if we played So Clover that way, the game would be the easiest, most boring game that we could play, because every time you guys do something wrong, I'm going to say, no, that's wrong. So really, I'm just guiding you to put things back in the order that they're in. We're not actually even engaging in the clues that I've left you, right? So that completely makes So Clover one of the worst games that you could play, I think. And on the flip side, which isn't quite as extreme, like years and years ago, we played with my partner at the time and your partner. We played Hanabi, and you and I think were on a team, and we were playing like really, really obeying the limited communication. Whereas our partners were like not egregiously, but they were giving each other like little eye signals and stuff like that. And I don't think that they were doing it because they were like, we need to beat Carlo and Dylan. It was just like that's instinctively how they like I think approached co-op games, and that was part of like the experience for them. But it makes it so that like. We start to feel like, well, we're right. But if we don't engage in that, we're going to lose, because like this is a game where if you start communicating, the game becomes way easier than if you obey the limited communication rules. It would be like playing the crew and me being like, oh, do you have this in your hand? Or like, are you going to play this next? Like suddenly the game is so much easier, right? And so those to me are like examples of how like outside of competitiveness, if you choose to go against the spirit of the game, I start to wonder like, why are you even playing this game? I think this genre might just not be for you. Maybe don't play limited communication games, right?
I think that's what it comes down to, yeah. And I will say, it's been a long time now since I've played Hanabi, and I thought that one was fully co-op. I don't know if it's team versus team, is it? But I think we felt they were making it easier for us. right?
I think I thought it was. I think it's coop. Well, I think you can play it like you and me could just play Hanabi and it would be cooperative. But I think when you play with four, I think it's like you're cooperative with your teammate. I could have sworn. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
I thought it was 2v2.
I thought everyone was on the same team. But either
you could
way,
be right.
if we're all like, we enjoy the challenge of a tough game and someone is sitting there going like as you're about to play a card and you're like, okay, well, like, yeah, we're not communicating, but like you're clearly telling me that I shouldn't do what I'm about to do. You're sending me that signal. And I want to ask you about the mind as a limited communication
I was going to bring it up. I'm glad you...
But so there's two different things. One is the, like, I know someone who has like said they've beaten the mind on like hard mode or the mind extreme or whatever with their friends, but they basically have established this inherent system where it's like for every number in the deck, you kind of just wait 1 second per number. So we're all kind of simultaneously counting in our heads quietly so that it's like, well, I have the 7, so I'll wait 7 seconds to play that, and then I'm going to trust that the next person who has like the 9 is going to play that 2 seconds after me, and then it's like, well, then that's like, why are we playing the game if we've established this other language that is kind of like outside the rule? Like, to me, that's against the spirit of the game.
And in a weird way, like the mind keeps it pretty vague in the rule book of what's in the spirit of the game and what's not. So technically, maybe it is in the spirit of the game. I would just argue that it makes that game much worse. And it would be like, my friend Sarah and I took us like over the course of like a year or two to beat the mind at 2 players. And we're playing like maybe like once a month, once every 6 months, once every 3 months, like kind of whenever we get it to the table. But it felt better when we beat it. But if we had been every time we were playing, giving each other certain signals that were outside of us, just learning each other's play tendencies and stuff like that, suddenly it's like that there's less of an accomplishment. Maybe we're not as incentivized to come back to it so often to just keep being like, can we beat the mind? Can we beat the mind? There's not really that draw. So that's that's a great example. That's like less party-ish, but still in that same vein where it's like, as soon as, I think, but it's really just with any limited communication game. And the other example I'll give, and this is one that you reminded me of last time, is Gloomhaven. Like our group played Gloomhaven, and this is something we did through the course of the entire time we played. And in hindsight, I bet you it would have been more interesting and more competitive for us to not do this, where you're not allowed to communicate the initiatives of cards in your hand. And so everyone's going to pick a card from their hand, and when you are 2 cards in the hand, and whichever one's on top is the initiative you're playing. And when we reveal that, that's going to determine what the order is. And the order matters. If you go first and your move is going to put yourself in a different position, I can't heal you, and I brought a heal card, suddenly I might not have anything to do with my card. So it's a big deal. And it says in the rule book, you can allude to like where, like how, like, oh, I'm going pretty early. Oh, I'm going pretty late. But we ended up taking that to the point where all of us at the table would be like, I'm going in the infancy of the first quarter, which would mean that 1 to 25 in the first quarter, I'm going in the infancy, so 1 to 10. And sometimes people would ask clarifying questions, and we'd get into the point of being like, yeah, like it would be like as if I just came out of the womb of the first quarter. Like, you know what I mean? Like we get really into it. And so you could really discern once you learn the numbers that are in a person's deck. Okay, I'm pretty sure he's playing this card, or I'm pretty sure he's playing this number. That was absolutely outside the spirit of the game. It didn't impact, I would say, our enjoyment overly, but it definitely made it less competitive and a little bit easier for us to know who's going to go first and who's going to go second, right?
It definitely did, and it was something I really struggled with. Like, I didn't want to say, guys, we really shouldn't be doing this like all the time, but there were times where I was like, well, then, like, at this point, just tell, like, we know you have a number 2 card in your deck, and there's your other ones are higher, so like, okay, it's your number 2 card. Like, just say 2 then instead of the infancy of the first quarter. But in that game, the order of the cards and knowing that isn't the whole game. That is a very small part of it. So I had one follow-up question to you about the mind. Let's say in the mind, and this used to happen, you're holding a bunch of cards in your hand. Let's say I have 5 cards and I have like a 97, but then my next highest card is like in the 40s. We've done this thing before where you play your cards in 30s, whatever, you play that second highest card, and then you kind of like cross your arms and sit back, like lean back against the chair as if to say, like, I don't plan to play any cards for the next little while. And the more we played, I kind of figured like, okay, when someone does that, they only, the whatever they have left is probably like 95 or higher. And do you think that's an acceptable clue? Like these are the kinds of reasons why I think like I didn't really like the mind all that much long term or want to keep playing, is because I always felt like, why am I having to always assess what is or isn't acceptable in terms of clues or eye contact or like winking or smiling? Like all of this just feels like it shouldn't be on me to figure this out.
So the distinction I'll make is that like an example you gave where you said the group decided that like every second you wait is a number, whatever. If I'm playing with a group and I pick up on the fact that you fold your arms and you go back and I'm like, I think this usually means he's got like a number that's like 40 numbers later. To me, that's fine because we're not communicating, but you're finding these like, and it would be different if you like also with your eyes were like looking at me and trying to get my attention. But if I just pick up on nuances you do that, guide me to be like, I think this means that when Carlo plays this game, this means this. That's going to be very different than when I play with Sarah and what her tells are and what is going to make me realize, okay, I think she has a number that's 20 down the line. And I've noticed that when I play the mind, everyone does, like even if someone's going to like lean back in their chair and be relaxed, it's a little bit different for everybody and it means something different. But if it would be different if you and me established ahead of time, okay, like when I put my cards down, when I lean back, it just means like, play your cards. Like I have something really late. To me, it's like now we're establishing a new house rule, a new rule that makes the game easier. If I have to discern this on myself and discern what does it mean on my own, and that to me is part of the limited communication of that game. Like I'm learning something about you and how you play the mind, and it's going to be different than how my partner plays the mind. That still doesn't make it for everybody, but there's a distinction at least, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's keeping this like example thing going here. Let's kind of get close to the end here, finish off here with like, let's talk about some other examples of games where they have unique spirits of the game. Maybe it's something outside of either limited communication, or if it is limited communication, it's a different type of it. And something that if it's competitiveness, it's a different type of competitiveness. I can kick this one off as well. I'm going to start by saying Magic the Gathering. And this is also just kind of like these type of competitive TCG card games. So this gets into a little bit of a competitiveness, a little bit of metagaming, but like the idea of these games, part of their rules, part of their design is you build a deck of cards. You try to build an effective deck that is going to whittle your opponent's hit points from 20 to 0 more effectively than they do to you. And Magic the Gathering, when you get competitive with it, if you're playing like standard format or the formats where you go to play tournaments and you bring your own pre-made deck, it has become very, very commonplace to essentially, when a new set comes out, when new cards are released, there are like the pros who determine what are the best decks. What's the, like this format is really going to be focusing on black-white. Like that is one of the strongest decks and you want to use these cards. And I can go online and I can build that deck exactly as it is, do little modifications. And now the game I'm playing is essentially, how well can I pilot this deck? That to me is different, and I'll get some pushback from this for sure. But like that to me is outside the spirit of what Magic was supposed to be. Like a friend of mine back in the day would play Magic where he would just build the weirdest, most interesting decks he could and take them to tournaments. And when he won with those decks, it would be amazing. But we had people at those tournaments get mad at him, like not jokingly, but get mad saying no one plays this deck at tournaments. And to me, it was like, you are missing, like you're playing a different game. We're not playing the same Magic the Gathering. You're playing this game where someone gives you a pre-made deck and says, try to win with this. You're playing a game closer to Keyforge where you're like, can I win with this deck? Whereas I'm playing a game of like, I'm taking the deck building seriously as if that is part of the game. Can I build a unique deck? Can I build a deck that no one's seen before? Can I build this deck using this card that no one uses? Like, can I catch someone off guard with the way I build this deck? And that gets lost in competitive Magic. All you have to do is look at like the top 8 of any tournament and it'll be like, oh, 5 of the top 8 use this deck. 5 of the top 8 had VV, this card in the deck or whatever. And it's like, if all you're doing is being like, what is most popular, what's the strongest, to me, you have lost the spirit of what the game was supposed to be in service of competing at a high level, which I'm not at that point, if that's what you're getting out of it, for sure. Like we are just playing different games and we have to accept that. But I think it factors in, if you and me were going to sit down, Carla, right now to play Magic the Gathering, and I came with a net deck and you're just using the cards you have, you're going to very quickly be like, why am I playing against you? Like I'll play, if I want to get back to Magic, I'll get back into Magic playing against someone else because I'm not interested in just either being forced to net deck to compete or having to get, for lack of a better way to say it, my butt kicked every single time because you're bringing a better deck to the table, right?
Yeah, this is a tricky one because just like you say, like there are people who want to play a game casually. There are people who want to play it competitively. Like certain games have a more narrow scale, and I think something like Magic has quite a wide scale because there can be like, a parent wanting to play it with their child just to introduce to this game. They played as when they were kids and it's like trying to pass on their love for the game. Or there can be like, the the most competitive players in the world playing at the highest stakes. And like I mentioned before that I wanted to bring it back to stakes at some point, so maybe this is a good spot to bring this up because of the varying levels of stakes in Magic. So I'm just going to ask you a couple questions here. Feel free to interrupt at any point here, okay? Just jump in when you want. But do the stakes change how you would view this, whether it's Magic or something else? And I'm going to give you a couple of categories. One would be if there was money involved. Like both, not just a prize, but if we're like in poker, for example, like you have to buy in with $5, $10, whatever, okay? $20. If is it $1,000 buy-in? Do the stakes of how much you have invested or how much you can win change things? Then I'm also going to ask you about the prestige, like just having an award saying like, you won this tournament. Even if there's no money involved, there's no actual prize, it's just something gets published, the public prestige of saying like, I won, I beat the other players. What about when we were playing on our charity live stream? Like those were like, we probably played even less competitively than we normally would. It's also, we're trying to keep our turns extra fast because people are watching us play, and ultimately we're all here to raise money for a good cause. What if someone's safety or health was on the line in some way?
Sure.
Right.
Like, and I feel like even just to keep it at like the stakes of like money prizes, big like world championship tournament, it feels less egregious to me. Like I don't have to watch the Magic World Championships, and I don't, and it's because I don't find it interesting to see these same decks being piloted. But like that it really isn't for me. It's for the highest pros, and to be fair, to be completely fair to all of them, the people that are playing at that level usually are great deck builders. That even they likely aren't net decking. They've likely figured out for themselves that these are the strongest combinations, and they have their own ways of like changing them. But it's more so like when you see the smaller tournaments and you can tell that people locally are just going online, getting a deck list, buying all those cards and learning to pilot a deck. That's different from being one of the pros that orchestrated that deck in the first place. Like they are still operating the spirit of the game. I just feel like it creates an ecosystem where you don't have to know, you no longer have to operate in the spirit of the game to compete at a high level. You can say, I'm going to ignore the entire deck building of Magic. I'm going to buy all the cards I need, and I'm just going to pilot that deck. And that's not what a TCG in my mind is. That's more what Keyforge is. And at that point, it's like, why not just play the one game where you can just get a deck and learn to pilot it, right? So, but again, like you're right. As soon as money's in the line, as soon as it's a tournament, as soon as it's like the stakes matter even more than winning that game, it's the outcome of it matters more. People are going to inherently use everything they can to win, and for you to compete, you have to match them. And I think that's why I often don't like that level of competition, is because I'm essentially being told, match what I'm doing or lose. And the end result is I almost always would lose then.
Yeah. So like, let's think, you've seen the movie Rounders?
No.
Okay, Matt Damon, Edward Norton, John Malkovich.
I know of the movie, but I haven't watched it. Yeah,
excellent movie. All I was gonna say is like the stakes are very high for Matt Damon's character in there, and he starts kind of like saying things to get John Malkovich's character kind of like off of his game. And in there, I think we'd both agree, if you saw the movie, you're also rooting for, like, Matt Damon's the good guy. You're rooting for him. So in there, it's like, yes, this is acceptable. So I wanted to ask you an example though, and there's going to be a follow up. So I might be setting a trap for you here. So okay. answer carefully. So let's say you come over for a game. Let's assume that it's like whatever. Let's say it's middle of the road in terms of like whether it's a super competitive game or not. Okay, let's say something like maybe Through the Desert. Let's say you come over and you know that I've really been struggling lately. Okay, like, my cat died in the past week, I lost my job, I lost my wallet and my identity was stolen, and my car window was smashed, and it just feels like everything is going wrong for me. I could just really, really use a win right now in real life. Like, you know that I'm kind of like fragile. Is it suddenly more acceptable for me to do something outside of the spirit of the game? Or should I be like, should there be an expectation placed on my opponents, like on you, that you are gonna take it easier on me because you know that I really need that win?
So yeah, this is a great question. So if this was the case and I was playing a game with you or playing a game with my partner, I would not take it easy on either of you, because both of you are people who really, I think, like, to different degrees and different reasons, enjoy like being competitive. One of the first things my partner told me when we started playing board games was, you better not let me win on anything. And it was because like, and so I know, like, and there's been times where I beat her very badly, and she's beat me very badly too. But like that, I would know that I'm not helping your situation by letting on that if you found out that I was letting you win, or you saw me do a really obvious like misplay and you have to start questioning whether I'm letting you win, that would actually probably add to all the stuff that you're feeling. But if I'm playing against someone who like doesn't feel that seriously about it and or wouldn't be able to tell. And I truly think that them winning this game is going to like, make them go like, oh, at least I got something today. Yeah, I wouldn't tell them, but I would steer that direction if I think it's going to make them happier, because I'm someone who, like, the reason we're playing games is to have joy. And if they're not someone who gets that out of like winning, competitiveness, like feeling like someone's let them win or whatever, and I think I can give them that joy and improve their day, I might be like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna take it a little easier, or it would not even that I'll take it easy. I'm gonna try a strategy. I'm gonna try something different this time, and maybe it works out and I still beat them, but I'm gonna just do a little bit of a different approach and give them the opportunity to be like, this is a way you could capitalize on me because I'm trying this outlandish thing or something like that. That's more what I would do. It would be like in Magic, if I Magic the Gathering, me building a really absurd deck, being like, can I make this work? Maybe this is the opportunity that I do that then.
Okay. And so here's the follow-up question.
Yeah.
The trap. So for that same person that you might be trying something different on, like, again, is it a scale? So like, if only one of those things have to be like, yeah, I lost my wallet and I've been kind of like really frustrated with like having to reclaim my ID and like all this kind of stuff. Then are you still like, and is it up to you to be like, I'm picking up on this, and based on this, I'm going to adjust my approach to this specific degree? Like, where does that come? Like who's that? Like,
I think it is on me. Like this is going to be specific to my situation, but like I would consider myself an empath, and what I mean by that is that like whether I like it or not, and often I don't, I pick up on things of people around me, how they're feeling, little mannerisms, little facial expressions, the way that the tone they use. And so I can usually get a read on whether someone's having a good time, a bad time, annoyed, happy, whatever. And it does, if I take that personally, not like personally I'm offended, but personally like, can I do something to help this person, or can I impact them? I like that's where that scale would come into play. If I would be gauging like, how bad is Carlo feeling today? Does he really need the win, or did he just just have a bad thing happen and it's just like he'll get over it 2 turns into this game kind of thing? Like my brain works that way, where I'm going to be trying to assess where on the scale you are and what my responsibility, quote unquote, is to try to give you a better experience in this game that we're playing. If I approach this game and give my all, is that going to help Carlo or hamper him today? And if I know definitively an answer to that, or I think I do, that will color how I approach it. And that's just how I operate as a person, for better or for worse.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
sorry, go ahead.
No, I would just like, because this is kind of in the last topic that I was going to talk about anyway. So I want to ask you a question then to kind of close this off is, can you still enjoy a game if it is being actively compromised at the table and it was outside of your choice? If you're in 30 minutes into an hour and a half game, so you're a third into the game, you're not abandoning at this point, and someone you realize someone is just not only are they not competing, they're just like trying really weird things, and you're not going to get a competition out of this. Can you still enjoy that by like pivoting your mentality to the game? Or at this point, if you're already in it and you find that out, is it just too disappointing to you that in your head, even if you don't show it, in your head you're kind of like, at this point I just want to get through this game and move on? Like how do you feel in that sense?
It's really tough to say. I think if I'm at the table, like if it's a big group, if it was like a 6 or 8 player game and one person is doing something outside the spirit of the game, if there are enough of us there that recognize that and we can try to find a way to kind of like either ignore what they're doing or play around them, I think I might be able to, like, let's use the word salvage some enjoyment out of it. But no matter what, it is going to have like, yeah. It's like putting a rotten piece of food in the rest, like in a bowl of good, like you're just going to spoil the rest of this, like the rest of the experience for everyone. Like a couple quick examples I'll give is like, these were both like probably like 20 years ago, but like if you're playing Catan and you do something like you do the Monopoly thing where you like trade someone a whole bunch of ore and then you play the Monopoly card and take everyone's ore, or you block someone and they're spiteful and they're like, okay, well, I know I'm going to lose, so I'm just going to give all my resources to this person. I'm going to make sure this person beats you. Like I had that happen once and it never happened again. And I think we all agreed like that definitely ruined the spirit of the game. That's like a level of king making based on open negotiations. So that I didn't enjoy the experience. And another I would say is if you're playing a game like Dominion where someone has a really, really long turn and they're not announcing what they're doing, whether they're intentionally trying to be deceptive or not, if they're just like playing cards and drawing stuff and doing this, and you're like, whoa, it's not that I think you're cheating, but like, I want to have some idea of like how your deck works, and also like we should all be making sure you're not doing things that are incorrect, like making mistakes and taking extra actions or buying things you can't afford. So like, talk through your turn, right? Like, it's not the same level of deception as if someone like goes like, hey, look over there, and then you turn around and they do something. You're like, oh, what did you do on your turn? You're like, well, sorry, you should have been looking. Like, that's intentional deception. But even if it's unintentional like that, where people can't track what you're doing, I think it can ruin the experience of the game. How often do you feel, or have you felt in the past, that the spirit of the game really has been compromised? Like, the reason I ask is because we're very fortunate. We've talked about the fact that we get to play a lot of games with our like closest friends and stuff. So again, I gave those examples of like 20 years ago. In the past 5-10 years, like, it has happened very seldomly at the table where I am. And I'm wondering, I know that you, because you have attended like Magic the Gathering events, and that can have a more competitive scene, have you experienced this maybe more than me?
Like, I would say that specifically because of Magic, I probably experienced it more than you, but not within our gaming group. Like, to be honest,
that's what I wanted to know. Is our gaming group?
The people that I game with regularly, like we just, the rapport we have, the fact that it's all people that I love and care about, like, it doesn't really ever come up, or even if it does here and there, it's usually because of like a one-off thing, someone's having a bad day, whatever. But yeah, like, all my examples, my biggest ones come back to like the one that happened to me personally was like probably like 15-20 years ago when I attended a Friday Night Magic, and I was a limited format, which is like you draft your cards there on the spot, which is my favorite way to play because you can't net deck and stuff like that. And I drafted a deck, and I guess I drafted some cards that if people who play more often would recognize as being weak cards. And I played a best of 3 against someone, and I won the first game. And the person was upset that they lost, but he vocally was saying to me, you don't build that kind of deck. Like, you just don't put those cards in that deck. And he won the next 2 games. He won the best of 3. But I remember at this time, this is when there was these, like, you could look at people's scores, almost like a chess ELO rating for like in the province for Magic. And he was one of the top rated people, maybe he still is to this day, one of the top rated people in Manitoba for Magic the Gathering. But I just remember thinking, like, the thing you're upset at me for is the thing that is me enjoying this game and trying out some cards. And it's like you wanted to manufacture the situation to be like, I want to play against someone. Maybe I want that same level of competition. But the fact is, I just beat you, right? Like, I beat you in this thing. So even if the reason I beat you is because you didn't know what to anticipate, isn't that the whole point of drafting cards? Like, you don't know what to anticipate. I could draft all these cards. So you're mad that you couldn't predict things as much as you wanted. And to me, that's outside the spirit of any kind of card game. So that's like an example of like, that doesn't happen in our gaming group. So if it was, that would be something where I'd be less incentivized to play with those kind of people.
Okay, that's good to hear. I was worried about, like, we've talked about that, you brought up the competitiveness, spirit of the game, and I was like, is Dylan concerned about this in our gaming group? Like,
no.
am I like getting too competitive, or am I doing things against spirit of the game? Are there people I'm inviting over who you're feeling this about? And I'm glad we could it's purely just the, like, I just think this is such an interesting topic, and when I bring up topics like this, or when we talk about stuff, it's less about like me trying to inject my feelings on it, and more just like, I think this is something interesting to even hear what other people have to say. It's so specific to groups, it's so specific to games, and it's something that is an interesting discussion that we don't have to be mad at each other to talk about. It's just like, how do we all approach games? How do we approach competition? How do we approach like house rules, the rules of this game, non-communication, all this kind of stuff. So it's like, if we can start some conversations, I feel like we're doing our job as a podcast. So absolutely. And I love the topics you've been bringing to the table, just to be clear. So
cool. And the last thing I'll say is that I bet you there's going to be some cool stuff for us to expand on from this one. So if you're not subscribed to our Patreon, just know that when we do the expansion for this episode, it's likely going to be an interesting one. And we'll get to some stuff we didn't fit into this one. So that this is your urge to follow us on Patreon now if you're looking to get access to that. But that aside, I will say that I am feeling particularly full after this episode. This is a very, very good discussion. If you're wanting to hear more of us talking about a whole variety of topics and seeing our main channel, you can find us at youtube.com/allyoucanboard. If you'd like to chat with us more about the stuff you've heard here, or just any topics about board games in general or about life, you can follow us on or join our Discord and play games with us there as well. If you'd like to support us, like I mentioned, we have a Patreon. You can subscribe to us there, and you can help us financially. It goes to supporting everything we're doing and the longevity of everything that we're doing. Otherwise, this has been episode 8 of the All You Can Board podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll join you in 2 weeks for episode 9. Take care.
See ya, and don't forget to go subscribe to Undiscovered Games, Board Gems, and Good Luck Board Games.